Ollie,
Yes?
did you know that we've been filming the Magical Modernist Mansion vlog since July 2022?
I am very well aware, yes.
And did you know that although we've alluded innumerable times to the history of this magical mansion, we've never actually told the story in depth?
Yeah, you're right. I've seen you taking copious notes and photos and all sorts over the last few months, but we've never actually talked about it. And by the way, what do you think of my glasses? They're new.
They are mighty handsome and intellectual all in one go. Anyway, back to the point, Ollie. Less about you and more about this, okay? This is now our 37th vlog. And guess what?
Don't know?
I think we're ready. I've done so much research. I am certain that there will be conflicting pieces of information, but what I'm giving to you today with Ollie is from the records that we have read.
Yeah, so back in the day I studied history at university, and obviously I'm well aware that there are many interpretations, and we're doing our best with the available evidence and what we've been told, and also with the language barriers. But hopefully what we tell you will be pretty interesting.
Ollie, forget interpretation. My story is the best story, and you're going to love this journey. How about I transport you back in time to show you the history of the Magical Modernist Mansion, which is today really called Can Punxes, which means spiky house. But in fact, that was not its original name. That was its popular colloquial name. Its real name was Joan Ramon Artigas, named after the man who had it built. And this house was not on Plaça Mercer, but in the past, the square was in fact called Plaça dels Arbres, meaning Square of the Trees. And the reason the name changed was because it was named after, in memory of, the man who had the new church, which was built on this square. Okay, Ollie, then, you ready? Let's go.
Where?
To the Los Americanos Museum, of course. If you're good, after the Los Americanos Museum, we'll end up back here in Plaça Mercer, and I'll let you have a coffee. The building I'm going to take you to is just around the corner, next to the town hall.
I love this town hall. Beautiful, particularly the roof with those lovely sort of tiles, scallops, and then the bell at the top. Catalan ironwork.
It is spectacular. It's one of the most beautiful buildings. This Los Americanos Centre is to signify a very important part of Catalonian and, in fact, all of Spanish heritage. In the 19th century, there was a mass migration of men going out to Cuba in order to make their fortune. We'll tell you a lot more about that story. And of course, the man who built our house is one of those very men.
Let's have a quick look inside. It's only a tiny room, but it's got some lovely things in it.
It really does. Ollie, this is so lovely, this museum, because it's very tactile in demonstrating the story, and it's telling you the various ways in which the Los Americanos made their money in the whole of Spain. Okay, so tobacco, which was the case with our house, sugar, cocoa, cotton, liquor, such as rum, textiles, and then slaves. And it's important to talk about slavery in this story. We worried that there had been a connection with slavery with our house, and we were very relieved when we discovered that there is definitely not. And there are some reasons why we know that that's the case. The horrific accounts of the capture and selling of people from Africa into slavery leaves a black mark against the name of many who traded in America. We know that European ships took captive people in Africa and sold them on as slaves in America. And on their return, these same ships brought back cotton, coffee, and tobacco. Some Americanos from this first migration wave were involved in the trafficking and exploitation of slaves. The first wave of migration between 1783 and 1820 was usually merchants and sailors who made short stays in America for business. Actually, they were importing wine at this point. In the case of our house, however, Ramon Mestre arrived in Cuba in the second migration wave and purchased La Picota factory in the year 1900, which is many years after slavery and all its forms had been completely abolished in Cuba, which was in 1886. And that includes the indentured servitude system known as the patronato. Actually, the Catalans were known more for running shops that sold foodstuffs, such as sugar, salt, fish, dried meat, spices, and alcohol. And for this reason, they were typically known as the bodegueros, meaning the grocers. Ollie, look, this is a beautiful image of the tobacco company La Picota, which Francesc Marcer sold on to the Guillaume family. And actually, when the Guillaume family took over the La Picota factory, they expanded to rum production as well. But sadly, the factory had its ups and downs. There was an enormous fire, apparently, and in the end, it actually shut down.
So we can't go and see it today?
No.
Oh, look, Kyla, this is amazing.
Oh, go on. What is it you're seeing?
So, obviously, when everyone went off from San Pere de Ribes and the surrounding villages, San Pere de Ribes was a tiny, tiny village, probably quite poor. Then you have to imagine, over the course of the 19th century, the people who returned, who'd made money, which was only a small percentage, brought unfathomable wealth. And you can see with these new buildings, you can see this is San Pere de Ribes with all these new buildings coming up, and you can see what dramatic difference it made to the village, and you must imagine the kind of social implications of suddenly vast wealth coming in. This is on the Carrer Mayor. You can see they've got all the sort of colonnades at the back, which is a very sort of Americanos thing. It's something they brought back from Cuba. Oh look, and this photograph here shows one of the painted colonnades with a beautiful scene, which is actually in San Pere de Ribes, on a road just near here.
That's really exciting.
Wow.
When the Los Americanos returned from Cuba, they created a new heart of San Pere de Ribes. So the cultural and economic centre of San Pere de Ribes actually changed and became Plaça Marcer.
Whereas previously it was up on the hill. We'll have to show people that.
Yeah. So Francesc Marcer built a new church, and of course, you can see the Magical Modernist Mansion is located there. And that was the last of all the Americanos houses to be built in San Pere de Ribes. So he got the last prime spot in the most prominent square in the town.
So this bit is really cool. There's actually a feature on the Mestre brothers, and one of the Mestre brothers was Ramon Mestre, wasn't it, who built Can Punxes?
Yes.
So there were three brothers. It says Josep, Francesc, and Ramon, and they all built new residences when they came back. I think Josep built his house in 1875, and this is a house just kind of very nearby to here, on Mossen Andrew Malaga Street. I'm probably mispronouncing it. Its name is Cangelo, which I often walk by when I'm going for my dog walk.
Brother Josep, well, he built Cangelo, which means cold, distant, or aloof. And I just wonder whether he might have loved his nickname too.
So it's saying the last guy to return was Ramon, who is our guy. He's our hero.
Yeah.
And he was the last brother to return, and he came with the greatest fortune. He built Can Punxes. So obviously got that last prime spot in the square.
So we have a picture of a ship. This one is powered by steam, but actually until the 1870s, they were powered by sails. And in fact, depending on the direction of the wind, that would determine how many weeks your journey could take, and it could vary by about 3 weeks. In either case, whether it was steam or sail, the journey was treacherous. There was actually risk, Ollie, of pirate attack.
That doesn't sound good.
But Ollie, if they didn't die from pirate attacks, there were also horrendous storms, so they could be shipwrecked.
Doesn't sound good either.
Oh yes, but if that didn't kill them, then there was often yellow fever.
Yeah.
And that was another thing. So they'd all be vomiting on the ship and then dying. So it was horrific.
Yeah, when you look at this model here, you see how crowded that ship would have been and how stressful that would have been. I mean, we kind of, talk about people going over to Cuba and America to make their fortune, but I think we have to remember this was often because they were driven by huge poverty. And while the Returnos, the Indianos, the Americanos brought so much wealth to this country and across Spain, there was huge sacrifice and huge bravery that went with it as well.
Many of the emigrants that went to Cuba were men, young, and in extreme poverty. They had gone to try and change their situation. And then there were a few who were already powerful owners of prosperous businesses. They increased their economy in overseas destinations until they became extremely wealthy. These people settled in Cuba, Guantanamo, Havana, Montadas, and Cienfuegos. Yes, so poverty was a significant driving motivator. In San Pedro de Ribas, yes, it was an agricultural mainly village, and the grapevines that were being grown were being attacked, and there was no solution at that time. There is now. So many people had to try and find other ways of making money. The other thing is that it was tradition in those days. The oldest son would inherit the farm, and then the youngest sons would go into nearby towns and try and make their money to support the family that way. Well, what eventually happened was they said, hang on, we could actually become rich beyond all imagination if we just send our children to Cuba. I mean, it's a big deal. They saved a lot of money for this transatlantic ship. And it was a whole big sacrifice for the whole family because, of course, they lost their son. And those sons lost everything. They lost their family, their cultural heritage, and they took on great risk.
So when the Indianos or the Americanos returned, it wasn't just about building big fancy houses for themselves. They also took real care, many of them, over the communities they moved back into. You know, so doing a lot of social good as well. So we saw that in Begur, where they built a big social centre. And we know that in San Pedro de Ribas too, the square and the church and so forth were built with money from Cuba.
Yes, and the hospital that we know about that was donated by Francesc Mercer.
I don't think we can underestimate the huge wealth and social change across the whole of Spain that was due to people returning from Cuba and America.
Ollie, I have another interesting burning question within me. Would you like to know what it is?
Of course I would.
Begur is interesting because so many of the men who migrated to Cuba from there did make it rich. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but Begur is absolutely jam-packed full of Los Americanos houses. And I am wondering why. And I have a theory. Would you like to know what it is?
Yeah, I would actually.
Well, when men would go to Cuba, they were often supported by a family member, if not a friend. So in the case of Ramon Mestre, it was his older brother who supported his migration. When he arrived in Cuba, his brother was already there and helped him settle. What I think is that maybe Begur is a testament to extreme community care, where they must have supported each other to such a great extent that they helped to ensure the success of one another even more. And that's fascinating.
It is.
A little akin to the case of our own house story, because let's face it, the three brothers were so fortunate because they all came back and built houses. And let's not forget that out of the 400 men who migrated to Cuba from San Pedro de Ribas alone, only 40 actually made it rich.
Yeah. I suspect some of them had a really, really tough time.
Yes, it was not a happy ending story for everybody, and with enormous sacrifice.
So if you do come to San Pedro de Ribas, and we hope you do, say hello to us. There's this tour where you can go and look at many of the buildings that were built by the Americanos, including, so it's not just the hospital in San Camilo you were talked about, so there's this one, which is the Redos de San Josep y San Pere, which was a hospital care centre, which was also built with money donated by Americanos brothers Josep and Pere Jacques. So, you know, it was a huge social change. You know, I think it must have caused some problems as well, because you got huge wealth coming somewhere that was quite poor. I imagine it was a little bit tricky.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I mean, if you can imagine, take the house that we're in alone, it's a mammoth building, suddenly in the middle of what was previously a poor farming village. People may have been poor, but may not have been aware of how unequal. Suddenly, with the return of those Americanos, there would have been that apparent inequality of wealth.
But I think there are also huge positives as well in terms of the investment. So like everything, there's pros and cons. But what I would say is that what an amazing legacy it's left. And I really would recommend visiting the Americanos houses here. San Pedro de Ribes, coming to this museum, which is fascinating. There's a film they show as well. And also Sitges, Bega and so forth. It's just an incredible period of time that we weren't aware of until we moved here.
And of course, alongside that inequality of wealth would have also been an enormous influx of wealth into this community. And that's something that it really desperately needed. So yeah, it's not a black and white story. It's pros and cons, as with everything. And also it's testament to the story of human survival and how suffering can lead us to such enormous hardship in order to bring about great change.
That was fascinating, wasn't it?
It was, but I want to take you somewhere really, really special. It's significant for this story. Let's go. It's Cangelo. We're going this way. It's really fun having a little nose through the gate.
Yeah.
And we stumble upon Cangelo. This is the oldest of the Mestre brothers. Absolutely stunning.
We should have a sign like that. Welcome to Can Punxes. They got welcome to Cangelo.
The oldest brother, Josep Mestre, who actually went to Cuba first, so he didn't take on the family farm. And he was there from 1852 to 1872. And in fact, he supported Ramon Mestre and his older brother when they went out to Cuba in order to help them set their way and make it.
A very adventurous family. Pretty impressive that all of them went. It's just quite poignant to think of them all here in their little houses and all the social gatherings that would have happened between these three buildings.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Absolutely. Different styles. This one is lovely, isn't it? One of my faves. We are very lucky to have all these lovely buildings around us.
Yeah. Are you ready for the next location, Ollie?
Yes. Isn't this actually our house?
So, come with me. As you're here, walking along this edge, the side of our house, I want you to have a look up and you can see something that you've pointed out to me, which is all of these spikes. They're not only coming off the top of the house, but also the top of the pillars. But more so, look at the railings. They're very, very spiky. Now, when Can Punxes was built, it was not called Can Punxes at all. It was actually called Casa Ramon Mestre, after the man who built it.
Hence the initials on the front.
So, why did it then become Can Punxes? There are various conflicting theories about this, one of which is the spikes on the railings, or as Ollie says, the spikes at the top of the house. Another one is that he walked with a limp. This is something that one of the family members said.
And had crutches.
And therefore it was as though
it's kind of
were
pins.
walking on needles. Another theory that I have is, was he a little bit what we like to call spiky in his personality?
I'm sure not.
Yeah, but maybe that was a force for getting things done. He might have also been very nice, just very strong-minded. It's another theory.
Yes, it is. I like to go with the spikes on the top of the gate because they're beautiful. What do you like to go with?
Well, actually, I really like the theory that he walked with a limp, because maybe I always sympathise with the underdog. I like the idea that this man, who had what you could call an imperfection, did so well for himself.
Yeah, he's quite an impressive character, to say the least. They all were, really. Who knows?
And those 3 spikes are a very distinctive emblem of a Sanya building, aren't they?
Yes, he's an architect, but we're going to come to that later. That's a whole another vlog.
And this exquisite stonework to which we are discussing right now is highly significant, because when this house was originally listed as a patrimonial building, there were only a few houses in Catalonia and the rest of Spain in that category. Later, many more were added, but this was pre that time. So it was a significant building of national and local cultural heritage. The thing that they always write about is this most fascinating and captivating facade because of this incredibly ornate stonework.
It's lovely. It's going to be so nice too when we can restore all of it. This will be a gate to be proud of. At the moment, it's a gate with potential, I'd say.
Oh, it really is.
So this is Can Punxes, where Ramon Mestres' brother was. I think this one was built earlier because he came back earlier, 1890. But it's quite funny to think that they would have had like cousins and so forth be able to say hello from that window through to here. This is the cinema building where they have the theatre and so forth. It's quite amazing to think about the change that happened because of all the money returning from Cuba to towns like San Pedro de Ribas. And I think for me, having kind of got to know the town, the thing that kind of shows it most to me is when I contrast the 2 churches. So this is the new church over here that was built with money from Cuba by the same gentleman that built Can Punxes, the house we went to go and see up on the hill with the colonnades.
That was for my birthday.
Vlog. Yeah, on your birthday. So this was built around, I think, just before Can Punxes. But then you go and look at the old church on the hill and you just see it was a completely different feel. I mean, this town was transformed in terms of building style, in terms of a feeling of modernity at the time. Perfecto.
Ollie, how does it feel having temptation like this on your doorstep?
Worrying. I reckon I could get to the ice cream shop in 15 seconds in the bush.
I think we should make a rule that you can only attend this ice cream shop if you can pronounce correctly its name. Actually, Zinjanenka.
Zinjanenka. I think there won't be so much ice cream going on after all.
Maybe we could make a nickname for it, like Gigi.
Camilla, I think you're going off-piste. Can you tell us a little bit more about the man who built the house?
It's a captivating story because Ramon Mestre, according to some records, left at the age of 14. But according to others, he was just 12. And the reason why they think this is that on official documentation, he would have had to have said he was 14 to be allowed to travel on a transatlantic ship unaccompanied. So it's very probable that he actually was only 12.
Wow, brave boy.
So they were known to work for 7 days a week, 365 days a year, sleeping often at the back of the shop. They had the issue where they would earn not just money but tokens. The tokens could be spent in the pulperias, which I mentioned earlier. And so the money that they were earning was going back into the owner's pockets rather than into theirs. In the case of Ramon Mestre, he actually had to work for 36 years before he could save up enough money to buy La Picota, the tobacco
36
factory.
years?
Yes. And he bought that factory in the year 1900. He owned La Picota for 8 years, and then he sold it to another family from Ribas. And that goes back to this whole thing about the community trying to stay strong in order to help each other and build each other up. And think about this square here, because, of course, yes, there was this elite that had developed here in San Pedro Ribas because of this new money coming in from Cuba. But also was the fact that they had been through this incredible hardship together. Remember, they took a transatlantic ship. They couldn't afford to return, often for 25 years. In the case of Ramon Mestre, much more than that. In the time that he was out there, his father died. When he came back, he was 50 years old. And the tragedy of the story is, it was a matter of years until he actually passed away.
So yeah, I remember he married a 26-year-old, didn't he?
Yes.
And then he had the house, and then I think just a few years after the house was built, unfortunately he passed away. And that's one theory as to why some of the rooms are not decorated, because obviously he started the decorations and then perhaps the family decided, they were in mourning and it wasn't appropriate to be decorating anymore.
When Ramon Mestre died, the artwork, as you can imagine, it being so extensive within the house, took several years to complete and was still continuing when the family were living in the house. Ramon himself died when his son was 2 years old. And the artwork apparently was stopped at that stage. You can imagine that the emotional burden of that loss must have been great for his poor wife.
Gosh, that sounds like quite a tough time. So what have you found out about how things evolved from that?
It's not all doom and gloom, thankfully. Ramon actually had 2 children, who I will show you in this photograph because it's delightful. A daughter who was born before this house, Can Punxes, was actually built. And then the son, as you know, was only 2. When they became old enough, the son inherited this incredible mansion. And the daughter also inherited, she got the house in Barcelona. Now, the son, I will show you this photograph. He married, and if you look at them, in my opinion, they seem so in love. It's adorable. And guess what?
What?
Well, that oldest son and his wife, they lovingly had 8 children.
8? Gosh.
Yeah.
2's quite a lot.
And we were told that the top floor was often just used as a giant playroom for all the children.
Well, Ophelia would absolutely love that. There's nothing she likes more than having sleepovers with loads and loads of kids, or when her cousins come. Total dream to have the whole top floor full of kids. It's a lovely monument to that bravery, that brave step he took.
So many stories I will tell you over time, but there are 2 stories I want to show you now. When we first looked around this house, one of the things that we were told was that the children used to create a little theatre place. Welcome to the Magical Theatre.
That's what they used it for, a theatre?
Yes.
And the kids would be through there and they'd do a special magical production.
Absolutely need to do that.
Definitely.
But an even more captivating story that we've heard, and very romantic. So we uncovered some steps at the back of the garden that we had been told were here. Or we like to call them the romantic steps.
The steps of love.
The steps of love. Actually, in truth, the story is that, as you can imagine, when this house was built in 1911, ladies had a different sort of etiquette that they were expected to adhere to, particularly nice ladies from a home like this. So it was much easier for them to speak to their friends and neighbours by going up these steps and having a little chat through the spiky railing.
Yeah, without having to go out, in which case you probably have to be accompanied.
Yes. So ladies always had to be accompanied otherwise if they were to go out of the home. But Ollie and I like to embellish the story and imagine the sort of longing, loving romances that could have taken place at the top of these very steps.
Yeah, I think these would have worked for a nice chat with the neighbours. Oh, sorry, a Romeo and Juliet moment.
Absolutely agree. I think this is just the perfect meeting point. And I guess the railings stop the boys from getting too close.
Exactly, yeah. On which note, I think we should say goodbye.
I think you're right.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope that gave you a little bit of a sense about the history of Can Punxes.
I'm so happy that you could hear this captivating story. Please don't forget to like and subscribe because it massively helps us, and we're truly, truly grateful for all your support.